7575.
BBC Radio Gloucestershire.
That is my number in case you do want to get in touch with me. But let's talk about visually impaired musician Baluji, who realised that music was his first love and will be his last, and has performed with Boy George, Stevie Wonder and Shakira, and now will be performing in Bradford-on-Avon on the 7th of May. And I spoke to him earlier and asked him about his ensemble and where Baluji has performed in the past.
We have performed internationally, and we have performed this particular project called Antardrishti, which is based on Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavad Gita's 11th chapter, Vishwarup Darshayog. And we have performed in Mumbai Royal Opera House, and in Delhi British Council Theatre, and we have performed in Queen Elizabeth Hall here, and it was very, very successful. We had 18 visually impaired, not visually impaired, but the totally blind people, and with one dancer. Well, here we have performed with 4 dancers, and in India also there were 2 dancers.
Are the dancers visually impaired as well?
No, they are not. Originally, we were supposed to have visually impaired dancers from Bangalore, and something happened with the administration and they could not come. So we had to have dancers from here. So we had 2 dancers there, and one dancer will be in Wiltshire and we will perform on 7th of May.
So tell me about how you started to understand music and began to love music.
That's a very good question. Who doesn't understand music? Even children do understand, they cry in music. So I think music is already in every one of us, but it has to be exercised and taught. And so luckily for me, I used to sing so-called nowadays Bollywood songs. Those days it was just film songs. I used to sing them in my kind of broken language, and people used to love me. And when first time, my father took me to a doctor because I became blind when I was 8 months old. So he was taking me to the doctor. On the train, it's famous for blind people that if you're blind, you should be a singer. So they asked me to sing a song, and I sang the song, Bhagwan tujhe mein khat likhta par tera pata maloom nahi. And everybody was so enchanted with that. And my father realized that I'm a musician. So first he put me to the temples to play. It just naturally came to me.
How old were you at that age?
5 something. And then when I was 6, he took me to a blind school in Gwalior, central India. And the headmaster, when he saw me playing harmonium, singing Ramayana, Chopai and this and that, he wanted me then and there because my father just went to see how blind people are educated. But headmaster wanted me then and there because I could be an asset for them to make some donations for the school, because that school was running on donations in India.
The Braille you mentioned, so like Braille in English, are the characters the same as the characters in English?
Well, it's a 6-dot system, so you can make any language you want. And yes, there is a standard English Braille, and there is a standard Bharati Braille, and there is a standard computer Braille as well. So you can make whatever combination you want to make. You can make your own language if you want. So we can write secret letters between us and nobody will know.
yeah. And did you ever do that?
No, I didn't do it.
Then what about musical notes? And you can make musical notes in Braille then?
Yes, you can make musical notes in Braille, no problem. Anything you can write in Braille. And it will not be musical, but you have to know what those symbols means. So you can say S for Sa, for example, R for Re, whatever. And this way you can write outlines of the song, and you can write words. Of course, you can write words in Braille. Mm-hmm. So that will be done. But when you're talking about language, yes, we did have, because it has got 1 to 6 dots and different combinations, and we used to speak in combinations of numbers, and nobody would understand except blind person would understand.
There we are, Baluji Shrivastav, OBE. Performing live in Bradford-on-Avon this May, 7th of May, in fact, at the Wiltshire Music Hall alongside the Inner Vision Orchestra. And in fact, I'll continue my conversation with Baluji next week on the program as well, and also play some of his music so you can see what sort of music they're going to be playing on the 7th of May. That's coming up. But remember last week, if you were listening to the program last week, I spoke to visually impaired musician Baluji, who realised that music was his first love and will be his last, probably, and has performed with Boy George, Stevie Wonder and Shakira, and now will be performing in Bradford-on-Avon on the 7th of May. Now, this week, we'll continue our conversation when I find out what happened when he first met Boy George and Stevie Wonder. But first, I ask him, what was it like growing up with a disability in India?
Basically, when I was 40 years ago in India, there was not many provisions to look after blind people. But we have still survived. I'm here. We have managed. You see, if there are facilities, we take them for granted here. But in India, we don't have any facilities, so we have to work out our own mobility, everything. I didn't have any mobility training till I came here, which is 40 years ago. But after that, I know what mobility is, and I use the cane, and I use process of mobility, and I've got computers now here. In India, we didn't have any computers. We had to write everything by hand, and books and books and books, and we had to just cope with that sort of reality. So what I would like to say that if you have desire to do anything, you will, those days, I'm talking about 50, 60 years ago, there were judges in High Court in India, blind judges. So you can do anything, even those days.
One of the films I remember, you see, when I grew up in India, and I remember seeing the film Dosti in the 60s, and, and there you see how disabled people are treated and how they're mocked. I know it's a film, but it's based on some reality. Did you have any of that difficulty?
Lots of difficulties. If I walk with my glasses on, why do you wear glasses? You are blind. You should take the glasses off. You shouldn't come out. Those are the things I had to hear because I was a kind of rebellious person. I have beaten some people and I've been beaten as well. So those things happen. But, you have to face the reality, especially in UP and Central India. Those people are so illiterate and they just don't treat people like people. When I go to Punjab, people are more helpful. Maharashtra, extremely helpful. Gujarat, extremely helpful people. In UP, you don't find it. You say, if I'm going somewhere and they know that there is a hole, they'll say, go straight, no problem, go. And if I fall down in a hole, they laugh. That's what the blind people, those people were behaving with blind people. But despite of all, everybody is not bad and people are very helpful too.
This last week they were talking about blind people playing golf. So that's quite an achievement.
But nowadays they do everything because computers have arrived from here to them as well. There are lots of associations. They get money for computers for that. So blind people have lots of computers now. Here, for example, you have to prove to the access to work that you are working or something like that. In India, you don't have to prove anything. It's just you want to do it. You go to them and pay a little bit of money and you get the computer.
Tell me about your music.
Well, I personally play what I have learned, Indian music, and with improvisation, I can play with any musician. So I have managed to play with lots of great musicians here and in India, like Annie Lennox, Boy George, Massive Attack.
Stevie Wonder.
Indian music has the facility like Indian languages. When we speak in Hindi, we use the English words as well. Music, I can play with any music.
So when you played with famous people like Shakira and Boy George and Stevie Wonder, did you sort of realize how important that is to be with these superstars? And you're one of the stars amongst them.
Some of them I did realize when I came in the beginning, I didn't know. For example, you spoke about Boy George. And when somebody rang me, do you want to play with Boy George? And I said, well, Boy George, how old is he? And they said, you want to play or not? Just tell us. And I said, yes, I will play. But then I came in my kitchen and I spoke to everybody. Everybody laughed. Yeah. Boy George, I should go and play. And when I went to the studio, the Boy George himself came to the taxi and collected me. And I said, well, I want to see Boy George. And he says, that's me. I said, wow, such a big Boy George. Yeah. And he was very happy.
And the Stevie Wonder, of course, was also blind, and he became blind from a very early age as well. Or was he born blind? How did that feel?
Well, that was great. I just played in his show, and I met him briefly. But this was just like everybody was there, and I supposed to just say hello to him. And I shook his hand. And yeah, he's blind, so what? And so am I blind, and it was nothing new for me.
It's great, isn't it, Baluji? Baluji, who will be performing with his ensemble on the 7th of May in Bradford-on-Avon. And you can find more.